Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of the Self Love Lounge. I am thrilled you are here today and spending time with me. I am so excited to introduce my guest today. With us, we have Anita Govender, who specializes in belief work. And I'm really excited to have her on today because I know myself it's one of these areas that I've really had to work on. So I'm really excited about this conversation. So, Anita, welcome. Tell us all about you and your work.
Hi, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for having me and inviting me to this very special place of yours. So I'm really thrilled to be here. Yes, I am a belief transformation specialist, and basically I facilitate healing from traumatic events or current life challenges. And those are typically rooted in self-defeating beliefs. And so once we create the detachment from the emotional impact that these experiences have had on us, then we're free to replace the inherited beliefs that we came in with. And we can then, choose beliefs of our own that are self-serving. And so that leads us to the freedom and the self-empowerment that we all so desire.
So important. So
Yes.
important. So, how did you come about doing this work?
The hard way, as I like to say.
I understand.
So, none of this was even in my realm of awareness, because I started down this journey back in 2011, and I was very happily working for a corporate company. I was working remotely because they were based in Atlanta and I live in Michigan, and I was so happy doing my job every day until there came a point where I wasn't, and I found myself just in tears every day, and I thought, okay, it has to be the job, right? And so I decided to quit and figure out what was going on and maybe things would get better with me. So I quit my job and I was home, and then it didn't stop. I was still in tears every day and I thought, okay, what's going on with this?
Yeah.
And so I got to the point where I said, okay, I want to do meditation. I can either do meditation or I could go see, a therapist. So I chose meditation because I knew that I could do it that day.
Mm.
And basically what had happened was 2 years prior to this period, I went to a friend of mine who had someone come over to do angel readings. And so I went, I listened to the reading, and the lady introduced herself to me and said she did energy work as well as the angel readings. I never heard of it in my life, never heard of energy work in my life. And I thought, what was that? I came home, I Googled it, and it absolutely did not apply to me at all. So I
Okay.
said, okay, whatever that is, put it aside. Cut to 2 years later, I'm in meditation and energy healing drops back into my mind as out of the blue, as we say,
2 years later?
2 years later.
Wow. Okay.
Because I never looked at anything else after doing that Google search. And then just out of the blue, it just dropped into my mind. And I thought, okay, what is this? I Googled it again. And this time it was like, oh my God, this is me. This is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Isn't that
Complete opposite.
crazy? Wow. So it was like
Complete
almost like it was
opposite.
seeded and it just was like kind of waiting for the right timing to bloom, right? That's amazing.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that.
Absolutely, exactly what that was. And so I went to her and I said, all right, let me see what this is all about. And I took her classes and it really resonated so deeply with me. So I started on that path of energy work. And as that progressed, my clients naturally had me grow and change and evolve and move to doing more of the coaching side of things,
Okay.
to which now is the belief transformation work that I do. So it was a natural progression from the one thing to the next. And that's basically how I got into this. And I understand how all of that was so relevant and important to getting here. And then in doing my own personal healing, that was when I understood why I was in pain before. And I will be the first to tell you, like so many other people, I had a great childhood. I come from a very loving, supportive family and home. I don't have any of, the big traumatic things that a lot of people have to deal with. And yet, with all of that, I still had my own issues that I needed to deal with in terms of self-worth, in terms of the confidence, in terms of the self-esteem, all of those things. And so, and of course, all of that was related to all the beliefs that we came in with.
So, paint a picture for my listeners, because a lot of my listeners do struggle with their own self-worth and confidence. So, help us understand, what did that look like from a symptom standpoint when you were struggling with your self-worth and confidence? What was some of the pains and challenges you were facing during that time that forced you to look at doing something different?
So that's a great question. And honestly, the biggest thing that I've noticed with myself, and then you can see, once you learn for yourself, it's easier to see in others as well. The biggest thing is, I would say there's two of them. Number one, taking things personally. Everything that people say, no matter how they say it, no matter their tone, no matter the words that they choose, if you have a pain point around that, you're going to take it personally, whether it's their intention or not. And I found that that was the biggest thing. So we, it's very common to say, oh, but we're so sensitive, right? Yeah, there's a reason for that. And so taking things personally, number one, and then of course, which follows right on its heels, is being defensive. You
Oh,
want to defend and protect, and it's either you're right and someone else is wrong, and or vice versa. But there's always a right and a wrong, and that kind of thing. So those were the two biggest things. But taking things personally, that was a big deal for me, and that was when, with the healing journey, when I understood, okay, it's not about what they said or how they said it or that kind of thing. It's everything to do with what meaning I assigned to whatever was said.
yes, for sure. And
Yeah.
they say relationships are a great mirror for our own healing, right? Because they teach us what we need to heal within ourselves. Um,
Yes.
so for sure. And, certainly I love that you brought that up, because it's not an answer that I hear as often about, just being defensive and really taking things personally. But it is so true, because when we're in that place where something is triggering, I usually say trigger,
Mm-hmm.
the word trigger,
Mm-hmm.
causing triggers within us, there's a reason for that, because it's something that's unhealed within us. So, beyond, I know you said the self-worth, but what do you think was really the cause of your unhealed pain?
So for me, what one of my struggles was that growing up in what I would call a patriarchal society, and that's how, coming back with those beliefs, it's like, there's a hierarchy to the men and women kind of thing. And so, and I had an older brother, and a lot of it was for me to, I basically, had to cater to him, that kind of thing, even though, we were 2 years apart and that kind of stuff. But that's, for me, where a lot of that came in, because I somehow felt from a very early age that this was not how it is for me. Like that, even though I grew up in that wasn't who I was. It didn't resonate with me at the core. And so, but then you have experiences that basically show you something different to
Yes.
what you believe about yourself. And so you take on the experiences, and that's your reality. That's what you're living then. And so when we come from those aspects of it, and we take that on to believe, well, this is who I am. And then you start bucking the system. You start fighting against it when you can. That's where a lot of it came from for me. So understanding what my own worth is as a female. And then, of course, in my own family nucleus, I've got two sons.
Mhm.
So what is it that I wanted to model for them? And what is it that I wanted to instill in them in terms of values? And then how they see women in today's society, because they're living in a very different world than what I had grown up in.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so modeling that, and then fortunately, again, not just myself, but of course with my husband, because he's the role model, because he's the male. And so also modeling from there, so it changed the entire dynamic of how my kids were raised and who I wanted to be as a woman in society. It changed a lot of that for me.
Wow, that's awesome. Would you say that
Yeah.
the energy work you started doing is what helped you to be able to be that intentional and show up for your family in that way? Or
Yes.
something different?
Yes. So the energy work really helped in the sense that when I understood that all these experiences that we have,
Mhm.
there is an energy that's created around each of them. And if we don't process them in the correct way, we basically hold on to them somewhere in our bodies. And then they show up as different things within our energy system, within our physical bodies, depending on the severity and the depth of the issue.
Mhm.
um, it will show up in different ways.
Okay.
So it might be physical ailments or, dis-ease, which is the disease, and those kinds of things.
Mhm.
So the energy work absolutely played a paramount role, because when I understood, okay, this is what's happening when you try to get over something, when you try to just forget about it, but you're not, when you distract and you don't actually deal with the problem, and
Mm.
it keeps resurfacing in different ways with different people. But at the crux of it, the emotions and the ouch is the same. So when you can draw a line to all those dots and oh, it's exactly the same thing, just showing up in so many different ways. It's the same issue.
Mhm.
So releasing the block and stuck energy from those experiences made a huge difference. That's where the energy healing came in. And that's what I realized was actually needed as the step one in order to then go and change what our beliefs were about ourselves and a situation. Because we can do the mental work, which is, the repetition, the affirmations and that, but it takes a lot of work
It does.
to do it in that way, to change our belief system and to rewire the brain.
Yeah, and I do want to talk about beliefs, but before we go there, I want to just help the listeners understand one more thing around the energy piece.
Yes.
How do we know if we are carrying energy, stuck energy, or energy that's stuck in us? How can we tell that?
So, and this is probably going to upset a lot of people, but it has been true for me in my experience, is that whatever we think, when we feel the ouch, when we are triggered, when someone says it or does something, that right there is clue number one, that there is something within us that needs to be healed.
Yeah.
That right there is the clue. Now, that doesn't mean to say that if you see something that goes against, say, your belief system, which and moral code that is wrong, that you don't have an emotional charge around it. You do, but it's in a different way. That emotional. So if you see someone treating somebody else, disrespectfully in a bad way, and you want to do something about it, that's a very different kind of emotional charge than you taking it personally.
I see.
There's a difference there. So you stand up, you come from a very different place. That's when you come from that authentic self. You say, excuse me, I really don't appreciate the way you're treating this person. Can you please step aside, take a break? It's very different than if it was happening to you and you took that personally. You wouldn't, we'll call it rational. You wouldn't be so rational,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that for me is clue number one. And I'll give you an example of this that I personally went through. So there was a time I remember I was washing the dishes, and my husband was in the family room and he was watching TV, but we were having a conversation about something. And I know he mentioned something to me. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I do remember the anger just coming up in me like, Oh my gosh. And I was ready to say something. But I said, hold on, just hold on. Just take a beat. I was speaking to myself. And I said, okay, what did he say? And in my mind, I went over, okay, he said this, this, and this. That's what he said. Okay, what did you take that to mean? And I said, I totally put that I am not good enough, that the whole attachment to whatever he said.
Yeah.
And then I stood there and I said, now let's be serious. Do you honestly believe that he is sitting there and he's thinking, let me say these words in this exact order, and that's going to make her feel like she's not good enough and create an argument? Like, do you really think he's gone that deep with it? Or did he
Probably
just think, absolutely not? I mean, come on, there's sports on TV.
not. Oh yeah.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, he's not thinking that deeply then.
Absolutely not. And so in that moment, when I realized that,
Yeah,
it was because I attached that meaning of I'm not good enough to whatever he said.
to something else.
In that second, I felt that anger just go whoosh right out of my body, like
Yes.
instantaneously. And there was no argument to be had. It was dead, it was neutral, and therefore I can't tell you, because I have absolutely no recollection of what that even was about. Like zero, because it's gone, it's done with.
But that's the whole point. I mean, I think a lot of times things become more when we attach, to your point, any of our old conditioning and beliefs to something,
Yes.
it becomes a lot more, right, of a catastrophe than if we don't attach it. But that takes work and that takes practice because I
Yes.
can do that now, but the girl 4 years ago, no way. No way, no how. Anything
Yes.
someone said, I would have reacted to. It would have been a whole thing. It would have ruined the day. Where
Yes.
now I can say, you know what? Do I need to think about this in this way? Or where is this coming from? Or what else can be true? And then I'm able to flip that and switch it. But there is a practice in between
Hmm.
those two things that has to happen, right?
Awareness is the first step.
And awareness is the first step. Okay. So talk to us about what the rest of that looks like, how you would walk a client through being this reactionary person that gets triggered and just reacts to the person that's able to recognize things for what they are. Like something is being triggered in me. Help me walk through how I take that, pause, reframe, and think something else.
So within the program that I typically walk my clients through, the awareness of their feelings, their thoughts, their behaviors, there is there's an extensive practice that they go through with me, where they are aware of all these things, and then we also work out what are the beliefs that they have running, the self-defeating beliefs that they have operating for them. And this is always what I find very fascinating. In week 2, when we go through, it's a 4-week program. So in week 2, when we go through the process, they just check off all these beliefs. That's me, that's me, that's me. Oh, absolutely. Yes, yes, yes. And they resonate with all of these. So that's step 1 right there. Actually looking at it and being intentional about it and understanding these are the negative beliefs that I've got running through me. This is what triggers me. So when an instance happens, now they know, oh, that's a belief I have. Whereas we've all been reacting, but we don't really know what are the beliefs that actually control me right now, because it is the beliefs that control us. So what are those beliefs? When we don't actually sit down and examine that for ourselves, it's very hard to know in the moment, oh, that's a belief I have running,
Mm.
because there's no awareness there. So
Well,
once we understand, go ahead.
sorry. So just because we have a belief
Hmm.
about something doesn't mean that we have to keep that belief. We can
Correct.
change our beliefs.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So when we're aware, oh, that's a negative belief that's running, that's when we can create the pause. And instead of reacting, we now respond.
Mm,
So it's a matter of going within. So we have that awareness. That's my belief. Okay, so if I'm taking this to mean I'm not good enough, then that's something I have to do. It's not what the person said or did. And so it's it's looking at that and okay, what do I not feel good enough about? And then going deeper into that.
mm,
But it's understanding what are the beliefs that are running us to begin with.
I see.
Because having that knowledge is really important. If you didn't know that you had a belief, a negative belief that was running you, how do you know when it shows itself that you have to actually address this on a different level?
I have to imagine there's quite a few people out there in the world that have these beliefs running through them and they're not even aware of it. Would you agree?
100%. So I have I have a list of about 50 that I walk my clients through, and they come out of this with like, oh my God, did I just check almost every one of them? They come out with like maybe like 30 something of them, right? Which
Wow.
for the first time that they've actually looked at and said, wow, yes, that's me. Because when it's there and they are choosing it for themselves, that says a lot about, okay, I didn't even know this was here, but I absolutely resonate with that. It puts a whole different perspective because it's there in black and white
Yeah.
and you understand where you're coming from.
Mm.
And
So,
then when it ties into so coming back then to, okay, we know what these beliefs are and we can go back and look at, okay, how were they created? What were the experiences that you had that contributed to you feeling this way about yourself? That's when we go in and we look at that and we tie the energy work into that to release the stuck energy from the experiences to it. So now it's like, okay, that energy is gone. And then when it comes to reprogramming their beliefs, because now they're choosing their own,
mhm,
suddenly it's like, well, why did I choose that? I don't resonate with that anymore. Nope, that's not me. Nope, I don't even know why I did that. That doesn't feel true anymore
right.
because the energy has been released of the experience.
Okay.
So too the beliefs that came with it. Now we can say, okay, here's the new beliefs. And that's when the affirmation and the repetition of that becomes so much more impactful.
Wow, such powerful work and so needed. Is the process for rewriting your beliefs the same for any belief that you currently have? So no matter
Yes,
what the belief is that you have that you're looking to rewrite, you can do the same process for any of those beliefs?
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And often what happens, and as I'm sure you've discovered even with your own work, one experience can hold many different beliefs.
Oh, yes.
Right? It's not just one experience per belief. It can hold many different beliefs. So when you release the energy from that experience, you're free to let all of those beliefs that are associated with it go as well.
Yeah.
But sometimes what happens too is that, learning and our healing is not linear.
No.
You know,
Yeah.
it's like a spiral that we keep climbing. That spiral staircase, and we just keep going a step higher and a step higher. So maybe you had an experience and you've had 5 negative beliefs that were associated with it.
Mhm.
You do the healing and you let that go. And maybe you were aware of 3 of the beliefs and you were able to reprogram those. And then later on, you got to a point and then something else happened and you think back to that experience, you're like, but I cleared this. Yes, but there are 2 other beliefs that weren't in your memory at that time
Oh
that's
my
still
God.
associated with that. And so you got to clear that. So yeah. So
Ah,
that's why I say it's like a spiral because we keep getting it at different levels, right?
well, that's no fun.
I know.
I understand because, like, I've been on this healing journey for 4 years now, and I'm always like, am I done yet? Am I done yet? And every time I think I am, I laugh at myself, and I'm like, haha, that's hilarious, right? Because now there's something
Yes,
I need to work on. So, I do believe that, our purpose here in life is to continue to heal and learn and grow. That's our evolution here on earth. And
absolutely.
I am grateful now for these experiences, but there was a point in my life where I wasn't always too grateful for them, because the pain outweighed a lot of the other emotions that I felt. And so
Mm-hmm.
I can only imagine when people are stepping into your line of work, they're coming in pain, because typically a lot of people don't do anything until they are in a lot of pain. Um,
Absolutely.
and they're looking for relief, right? They're looking for peace. So,
Yes.
you know, what are the typical pain points? I mean, I know you talk a lot about how beliefs control your life, how they affect your relationship. Walk us through some of like the adverse effect of carrying these negative beliefs, and what the dream island looks like when you are able to heal these old conditions and beliefs.
So when you really understand yourself at the level of why do I think the thoughts that I think? Why do I feel the way that I feel? And then why do I behave the way that I do? When we understand this at a very deep level, it's understanding all about you. So imagine now being in a relationship,
Mhm.
and it could be a long-term relationship, it could be a new relationship, it doesn't matter. But imagine knowing yourself at that level, and for this purpose, we'll use a spouse,
Mhm.
or marital relationship, or romantic one. And, they, like in the instance that I gave you where they say something to you, if you weren't in this position, or if I wasn't in this position to say, well, okay, he said X, took it to mean Y. And that could have led, typically what would have happened was, of course, it would have been an argument,
Mhm.
because I felt slighted. I felt hurt by what he said, where he had no intention of doing that. He just said something
Mhm.
that would have led to an argument. And so what happens is we're always looking at, well, if you didn't say this, if you didn't do that, if you didn't say it like this, your tone, this, that, it's all about, everything is external when we're in relationship
Mhm.
without knowing any of this. Everything is external. And so when we start to see, wait, I do have a responsibility here. And once we start healing ourselves, then we don't look at someone else as always being the issue or the problem that needs to be fixed. It all comes down, most of it comes down to us,
Now you're speaking
healing ourselves.
my
Exactly.
language.
And here's really an amazing thing that happens, which has been from my experience, is that when I started healing myself and noticing, okay, this is not about my husband or my children or whomever, this is really about me,
Yes.
it kind of spread to the rest of the family.
Oh, just right
So,
now. Yes. It's so true.
yes.
When I walked away from, and I've told this story before, but when I left my husband, I had associated my drinking. I thought my drinking was his fault. I thought I only
Mm-hmm.
because he drank. And it wasn't until I left that marriage and, was still in that pattern of drinking that I realized this isn't him at all. This is me. This is a me problem, not a him problem. And then I got sober, and then more things started unfolding and developing, right? Like, the relationship with my children, the relationship with other family members. And I'm like, wow, it's not them. This is me. This is me that it's being affected because there's healing I need to do. And once I started doing that work, it was amazing the ripple effect it had on every single one of my relationships. Every single one of them improved and got better. Why? Because I got better. Because I fixed the
Exactly.
side of the street, right?
I look at that, in a very simple way. I look at that as a chemistry experiment, if you will. You can have 5 different ingredients that you put together in a specific order, and it will always, as long as you use the same ingredients and the same quantities, you're going to get the same outcome every time.
Yes.
But you change one ingredient, whether you remove it, whether you add a little bit more of it or a little bit less, you will never get the same outcome because you've made a change.
Yes. Yes.
And that's the same with us. Because we have changed, it absolutely affects everything else that we're in touch with thereafter.
Oh, it sure does. And for the better,
Yes.
right? Because
For the better. Absolutely.
and I also like to look at it like we're kind of removing this victim state of, everybody else is at fault, and we're really empowering ourselves to look
Hmm.
at our own ownership in all of that and how we're showing up and take responsibility for ourselves. Because when we're able to do that, then we're able to really look at things in a much different way, right? Because the way we talk to ourselves is ultimately going to shape how we have relationships and talk to others. And
100%.
I do,
100%.
I do want to talk about that because one of the things that we've been kind of talking about back and forth is just, this journey of self love. And, it's often you hear a lot about it, but to a lot of people, it's like, what does it even mean? Right. And I think a lot of the things that I teach is really, self love is self discipline. It's a daily practice, it's something that you do just like brushing your teeth. It's
Hmm.
really kind of taking these skills that we're talking about right now, and applying them to your everyday. So, how do you, Anita, use
Hmm.
things you teach in your every day to day life to really show yourself love and compassion?
When I started on this journey, I also didn't even know, what does self-love even mean, because it's always easier to love someone or something else. It's just, it comes so easily. And you don't have to be taught that. It just happens.
Yeah.
But when it comes to self, I think one of the biggest uh, lies that we've ever been told is it's better to give than to receive.
Mm,
And so especially as women, and there are a lot of men out there as well, but we tend to just give, 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 and we never think of receiving. We never think of taking or giving to ourselves.
mm,
Um, and that is such an important aspect of this because what we don't realize is if we continue giving without replenishing ourselves, there is going to come a point where we have nothing left to give. So taking the time to love ourselves and be gracious receivers, people often forget because again, it's we think of it as being to give is so much better because you're doing something for somebody else.
mhm,
But if you take those same two people between you and I, let's just say, right? And
mhm,
if I always want to be the giver because it makes me feel good, because that's the better thing to do, and you're always the receiver, well, that is really, really selfish because that goodness that I get and feel from giving, I don't allow you to experience. If I always want you to receive, you don't get to experience that. So that's really selfish and unfair as far as I'm concerned.
sure.
And I cannot be a giver without a receiver.
That's right. That's right.
It's the same energy. It's the opposite end of the exact same energy. So in order for you to experience the giving, the joy of the giving, I have to be a gracious receiver. I
Mm.
have to allow that. I have to take that in and feel the pleasure of that in the same way that I feel the pleasure of giving.
Why do you think we're so uncomfortable with receiving?
We were never taught how to receive because the saying is it's better to give than to receive. So
Mhm.
we all want to be the best. So we never think about, well, what it is to be a gracious receiver, what it means to have somebody else feel good about what they did. Um, and in giving and receiving, so that means giving to ourselves as well. And that's the self-love. That's, where we really have to understand, well, yes, we're doing things for other people, but if we do that for ourselves and we come from this place where we are so topped up, where our cup is running over,
Mhm.
then we're in the place where I would, I usually say, I don't do it till my cup is half full. I do it till it runs over, because whatever spills over, I'm willing to just give away.
That's
And
right.
I can give away every last drop that has spilled over, and it takes away nothing from me.
Yes. Yes.
And, two quick things with the giving and receiving that I'd like to share is, um, when we went on vacation some time ago, and we were staying at at the hotel, and the young girl that was doing the summer job came to clean the room, and we'd held the door open for her and things like that, and we gave her a really nice tip, because that's really hard labor that they do.
It
And it
is.
was just our way of saying thanks and appreciation. And so because she was so appreciative of the tip, she said, can I just go and change your sheets and do all of that? And I said, no, it's okay. We're leaving tomorrow. We just have one more night. Don't worry about it. And she's like, no, please let me do it. So I gave in and I said, yes. I said, okay. So my oldest son at the time, when we had walked away, he said, Mom, I can't believe you let her, go through all that trouble of changing the sheets and things, and we're leaving tomorrow. And I said, no, I get it. But here's what you have to understand. The joy that we felt in giving her that tip, it meant so much for her. The only way that she could say thanks to us was by doing this. And there's no ways I was going to rob her of that.
Mm.
And he got it in that moment. He was like, oh, okay.
It's contagious, right?
Yes.
It's contagious because when we give, then, invites other people to give, and then we provide this sense of abundance in our lives,
Yes.
right? Versus lack, which I think is so important. And I love that story because it's really important, because now you're taking what you've learned and you're sharing that with your son, and now your son will feel better about giving and receiving, which is
And
wonderful.
receiving. And so even with the self-love, coming back to how this all got started, was I couldn't even begin to love myself. But I did always, I know this is going to sound so weird, but I always did love how my feet looked in particular sandals. I always loved that. And I always thought that those were my best features. So I started there. I started loving and appreciating my feet, because that was the only thing, that was the space that I was in at that time. It was the only thing I could appreciate about myself. So I started there, and I slowly worked my way up with something else. When it felt good and I got used to the good feeling of appreciating myself, I went to something else about me. Whether it was a quality, whether it was a physical quality, whether it was something within me, I just moved from one to the other and started building that up. And even, you know, taking in a compliment, those meant so much, because if you didn't get the compliment, for me, it felt like, well, then maybe I didn't, look good enough that time or whatever, right? Because I didn't get a compliment. And I worked my way all the way through to the point where I remember so clearly when my husband did compliment me, the one who says, "Oh, you look very nice." I said, "I know, right?" So it comes with a side of sass. Just a warning.
Oh, I love that. No, I love that because people look at that like, oh, that's being conceited, but no, I think that's wonderful. If you can acknowledge the compliment, but also be like, absolutely, I look good. Thanks for acknowledging that, you know?
Well, here's the thing. I didn't need them. I didn't need them anymore.
Yeah.
If you were giving them to me, perfect. That's awesome. That's great. That's just the sprinkling and the cherry on the top of the cake.
Yep.
But I didn't need it anymore. Whereas one time I needed it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's the difference with the self-love. So if I'm feeling good about me, it doesn't matter if anybody else thinks or feels that way. I'm still feeling good. It doesn't take away from me. And that was the point of that, is that there was such a flip and such a turnaround, that it was like, oh yeah, I don't even get upset if he doesn't say anything. It's totally okay. It's totally okay.
I can tell myself I look good.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think it's important, um, I think it's important to be able to like stand in the mirror and look at yourself and love what you see and to feel that good, because then we go out into the world and we exude that, and we're not looking
Yes.
outside of us for the things we need. We have it within us,
Yeah.
and it just allows us to have that, great outlook that we need in order to achieve the things we want. For some, it's hope. For some, it's purpose. Everyone has like a different want in their wish list, but I think we have to get to that place where we're really kind of grounded in ourselves before we can even get to that place where we can start looking at the next steps, right?
Or even being able to do it for someone else.
Or being able to do it for someone
Yeah.
else. And not even, we do it for other people, but doing it genuinely.
Yes.
Genuinely
Absolutely.
doing it for someone
Yeah.
else, because I think a lot of us can say things and do things, but it's not always with the right intention. So for sure, I think being able to come from a place of true love and genuine meaning is, and you can tell the difference for sure.
Absolutely. You can. Yes. Because you know, if you can tell the difference in someone else, they absolutely can tell the difference in you.
Oh yeah, for
It's a
sure.
two-way street. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
this was beautiful. Tell us your favorite book and quote.
So I have to say my favorite quote is by Albert Einstein. Um, Everything is energy, and that's all there is to it.
Mm,
Um, Match the frequency of the reality that you want to create, and you have no choice but to create that reality. This is not philosophy, this is physics. So I absolutely really dove so deeply into that and understood from that quote what my personal responsibility is
mhm.
in creating my own life, my own reality, my own experiences.
Yes.
Uh, a lot of the power, all of the power lies within myself. I just needed to know, first I needed to know that the power was within me, and then I needed to know how to use it.
Mm.
So that was a very powerful quote for me.
Oh, I love
And then, yeah, and then books. There are three books that I absolutely love by Michael Singer: The Surrender Experiment,
it. Hmm.
um, and then The Untethered Soul, and then Living Untethered. Um, I practice a lot of that in my own life.
Mm.
I practice a lot of that every day with the surrender, with the understanding of how these things, the experiences create the energy blockages within us, how to release them, that kind of thing. So
Mm.
those were my favorite. And then um, I do have another favorite author too, which is Neil Donald Walsh,
Okay.
and he did the Conversations with God series.
Oh, yes, I have heard about
Yes,
those. Yep.
yes. And those books, for me, at the time that I started reading them, I was going through a really difficult period in my life, and they absolutely changed everything for me, because it was like I could feel as I was reading these books that something was changing within me. So that whole series also was incredible. So those are among my favorites.
Oh, I love
Yeah,
that. I'll make sure to put them in the notes so people can find them.
absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
where can people find you, Anita?
So my website is the best place to get any information about the work that I do and how to contact me. And the website is www.beliefs180.com.
Okay. I will make sure to add that in the notes as well so people can look out and find your work. But this was wonderful today. Thank you so much for being on, for sharing your work, sharing your journey. So appreciate it. And I know all of our listeners will as well. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me in, and I really appreciate it. And I loved the conversation and our time together.
Oh, me as well, for sure. And for everyone else, thank you so much for hopping on today. I'm so excited to have you once more in the lounge and listening to us ladies talk about all the wonderful things that we love to do every day, which is empowering and making you stand in your truth and love yourself. So thank you. I love you all to the moon and back, and can't wait to see you again next week.